Caitlin Clark broke 62 records in her rookie year, finished fourth in MVP voting, and made All-WNBA First Team, something nobody had done since Candace Parker. Then she got hurt last season, missed most of 2025, came back to win FIBA tournament MVP early this year, and the WNBA GMs responded by saying they'd rather build a franchise around Paige Bueckers. Not only that, they called Chelsea Gray the best point guard in the league and said the Fever aren't even fun to watch. Clark just broke her silence on all of it, and what she said puts the entire league on notice. We'll get to what Caitlin said in a bit, but first, let's understand what the WNBA GMs actually said. Do you think Caitlin will win WNBA MVP this year? Let me know down in the comments below.
How are you feeling about just this opportunity to be able to go out there and finally get a chance to play the real game?
Yeah, absolutely. Just really excited more than anything. And even the preseason games were really fun for myself too. I treat those like real games. I treat those like they're the playoffs. And so just doing, the same preparation as I would for, game 1 that I'm going to do for game 29 that I'm going to do for the playoffs too. So I treat it all the same. And
the WNBA GM survey isn't something a sports blogger puts together on a random day. Every year, the actual general managers of WNBA franchises, the people who sign players, build rosters, and decide where the money goes, fill out this survey and rank players and teams across a bunch of different categories. So when the results drop, you're not reading fan opinion or media takes. You're reading what the league's own decision-makers actually believe about who's good and who isn't.
WNBA GMs, you can never count on or trust the GMs to understand what's going on. We've seen them be delusional, out of their minds many times, but we're gonna see what they had to say about this one.
The survey covers things like who you'd want to build a franchise around, who the best players are at each position, and which teams are realistically competing for a championship. Every answer comes from someone whose job depends on reading the league correctly, so you'd expect the results to track pretty closely with what actually happened on the court. They do not.
WNBA is stepping into a defining new era from A'ja Wilson and Breanna Stewart to start a wave of generational talent across every draft class. The league's depth continues to grow, entering its 30th year with expansion underway. A new CBA set to take effective. The annual General Manager Survey offers a snapshot of a league already in motion. See, this is already a bad sign. They're talking about everybody but the main person. We're off to a bad start already.
Let's talk about the franchise player question first. Last year, Clark led that category with 50% of the vote. GMs looked at what she did as a rookie, and more than half of them said, yeah, she's the one I'd build around. Then she got hurt, missed most of the 2025 season, came back and won FIBA tournament MVP, and the 2026 survey dropped with Paige Bueckers at 33% and Clark tied for second at 20%. Bueckers is genuinely talented, no argument there, but she didn't achieve the same level of success Clark had during her rookie season. Clark broke 62 records and made All-WNBA First Team in her first season, and the GMs responded to her injury year by handing the top spot to someone who they're trying to push. That's not a talent projection, that's a penalty for getting hurt and pushing an agenda. The point guard ranking is just as bad, honestly maybe worse. In the 2025 survey, Clark and Chelsea Gray split that vote right down the middle, 50% each. Gray is a champion. She's been one of the best guards in this league for years, and nobody's taking that away from her. But Clark's numbers, even when injured, were already competing with Gray's best seasons, and the two of them were considered equals by the GMs themselves just 1 year ago. Now, Gray pulled 73% of the vote, and Clark dropped to 20%. One injury season and the vote went from a dead tie to a blowout. That's not evaluation, that's recency bias running the whole show.
Well, WNBA GMs love the Dallas Wings, and it seems like Caitlin Clark is in another prove-it season like she was in her rookie year. Remember, reality is coming and all that. But Caitlin Clark, if you've looked at a lot of the lists that have come out before the season, ESPN had her ranked 10th in the WNBA. The Athletic didn't have her on first team All-WNBA.
And then there's what the GM said about the Fever as a team, which is where it gets genuinely strange. Indiana didn't crack the top 3 championship contenders. Fine, that's debatable. But the GMs also said the Fever aren't fun to watch, and they're not a team with a promising young core. And that second one is just hard to square with reality. Clark and Aaliyah Boston are both All-WNBA players. Kelsey Mitchell is a proven scorer, also an All-WNBA player who can get buckets in any system. Lexi Hull has been developing into a real contributor on both ends. Sophie Cunningham brings the kind of toughness that teams actually need when games get physical in the fourth quarter. So what exactly does no promising young core mean when you look at that roster?
Very interesting results from this survey. It seems to be a theme. It's been a theme throughout Caitlin Clark's career, to be quite frank. I don't know how much this serves as motivation or not. And, I think at times there's been a pushback to her popularity, but these are general managers who are tasked to putting together teams too. So there certainly is a reasonable skepticism about, I would say, based on last year, she didn't play, so show me again.
The survey also listed A'ja Wilson as the MVP favorite, and Wilson is a generational talent, a totally fair pick. But the same survey that put Wilson at the top didn't even place Clark in the conversation, which is a strange thing to write down when she finished 4th in MVP voting as a rookie and then came back from injury to win a tournament MVP on an international stage. What the GMs collectively produced is a version of the WNBA where Clark is a secondary figure and the Fever are an afterthought. And that version has almost nothing to do with what Clark actually did on the court. 62 records. Not 62 good games, not 62 strong performances, but 62 actual records broken in a single rookie season. And the number itself is almost hard to process because records in professional sports don't just fall. They accumulate over years and decades from players who've had time to figure out the league, build chemistry, and get comfortable. Clark walked in as a rookie and broke 62 of them anyway.
More history for the Fever rookie!
Let's talk about what her numbers actually looked like. She didn't just lead the league in assists as a rookie, she broke the WNBA's all-time assists record in a season. The all-time record, not the rookie record, the record for every player who'd ever played in the league, veterans included. And she did it while opposing defenses were picking her up 94 feet from the basket, full court, because coaches around the league decided early on that giving her any room at all was too dangerous. That's not something that happens to average players. That's what happens when you genuinely can't afford to let someone get comfortable.
Well, I mean, look, dude, she's the singular offensive engine talent in the history of the sport on the women's side of the game. And when you take it to the men's side, I always say it all the time, her vision and playmaking is on par with anyone I've ever seen.
The three-pointers she dropped in hostile arenas, the passes that found cutters before the defense even realized there was a cut happening, the pull-up jumpers off pick and roll in the fourth quarter of close games, all of it added up to a season that nobody in the league had seen from a first-year player in a long time. And the voters noticed. Clark won Rookie of the Year, which was basically automatic given the numbers, but she also finished 4th in MVP voting, which is the part that actually says something different. MVP voting isn't rookies' territory. The players finishing in the top 5 in MVP voting are usually veterans who've spent years building their case, stacking seasons on top of seasons. Clark nearly cracked the top 3 on her first try. The All-WNBA First Team selection as a rookie hadn't happened since Candace Parker, and Parker is one of the most decorated players in league history. A 2-time MVP, a champion, someone who spent her whole career setting standards for what great looks like. That comparison isn't a compliment someone throws around loosely. It's a way of saying Clark entered the league at a level that takes most players 4 or 5 years to reach, and some players never get there at all.
It was just announced that the Indiana Fever are set to play all but 5 games of their 40-40 game regular season schedule in NBA arenas. And this is obviously a trend that started a couple years ago with the Caitlin Clark effect. Obviously, her coming into the WNBA, there was so much demand from fans to see her play. So there were multiple games on the road where the Indiana Fever games were moved to bigger arenas.
Off the court, arenas around the league were selling out when Indiana came to town. TV viewership numbers jumped in ways that broadcast partners hadn't seen in years, and the national sports media started paying attention to the WNBA in a way that went well beyond the usual coverage. Some people in the league were pretty direct about it. Clark's arrival changed what the WNBA looked like to the rest of the country. So when you stack all of it together, Rookie of the Year, 4th in MVP voting, All-WNBA First Team, 62 broken records, the all-time assists record, sold-out arenas, and the kind of defensive attention reserved for players who genuinely scare you, you get one of the most decorated first seasons in league history. That's not an opinion. That's just what the numbers and the votes and the records say when you read them straight. None of that disappeared when she got hurt in 2025. The records didn't get taken back. The votes didn't get revised. The GM survey dropped while all of it was still sitting right there on the books. And the GMs wrote down what they wrote down anyway.
Caitlin is the most unique driver of offense I have ever seen in the women's game. And the core of that is ball in hand, right? Because of the way she manipulates the defense, because of the way she creates pace, because of her get-ahead passes, because of the threat she is with, off the dribble, pick and roll game. So it's for me, the center of the FIBA offense always has to be ball in hands for Caitlin.
The 2025 season was supposed to be Clark's leap year. After finishing 4th in MVP voting as a rookie, the natural next step was pushing into the top 3, maybe winning it outright, and instead she spent most of the year dealing with quad, thigh, groin, and ankle injuries that kept her to just 13 games. 13. That's not a rough stretch, that's a season that barely happened. The timeline is brutal when you lay it out. Clark went down early, missed huge chunks of the schedule, and the Fever had to figure out how to play without the person their entire offensive system runs through. And while Indiana was grinding through that, the rest of the league kept playing, kept building narratives, kept stacking wins and losses and MVP cases without Clark in the conversation at all. Nearly 10 months passed between her last official WNBA action and this weekend's return. And 10 months in a sports cycle is a long time for people to stop talking about you.
I think the mental preparation of the game is far more important, obviously, than the physical, especially when you're trying to compete on this level with, obviously the spotlight, the attention. It's game to game to game. You got to be able to turn the page. But I feel like that's such an important side of it. And honestly, that's something I've done since I've been in college. So just continuing to do that, I think it's a great outlet for me. And it's not obviously only basketball, but your personal life too. I think a lot of people at times forget that we're human, we go through a lot of things too. And being able to have an outlet for that too is really important.
Sophomore injury seasons are particularly rough because they land at the worst possible moment. The league and the media are just starting to form real opinions about what a player's ceiling looks like. So an absence in year 2 doesn't just cost you games, it costs you the chance to answer questions before they get asked. Clark's absence gave people permission to wonder out loud whether the rookie year was a product of hype, whether the records and the attention were maybe more about novelty than about actual basketball ability. Nobody said it that directly, but you could feel it in the way the conversation shifted. Stephanie White didn't rush it. Her approach during this stretch was to treat the recovery as a full rebuild rather than a patch job, focusing on rest and doing the physical and mental work properly instead of pushing Clark back onto the court before she was actually ready. White was pretty direct about the mental side of it too, saying, "When we know better, we do better," and making clear that taking care of a player's mental and emotional health alongside the physical recovery wasn't optional. It was just part of doing the job right.
What's your level of excitement for Caitlin, knowing that she's back and all starts this weekend for?
Yeah, I'm excited for her. She's put in a lot of work to prepare herself. Not just the work that you do in the gym, right? It's in the weight room. It's conditioning. It's movement patterns. It's nutrition. It's sleep. It's all of those things. And as young players, you're able to get by with only doing some of those things. And I think as you start to get older and you start to go through the ebbs and flows of what a career is like, and injury, and all the other things, that you really understand the value of all of it collectively.
So Clark sat, recovered, did the work, and then walked into the FIBA World Cup qualifying tournament as her first real competitive action in nearly 10 months. And she won tournament MVP. Not a participation award, not a feel-good recognition for coming back. actual tournament MVP on a competitive international stage where Team USA needed her to play well, and she delivered. Let's be specific about what that means. Clark came back from a multi-injury season that cost her most of a year, stepped into international competition without a full WNBA season to shake off the rust, led Team USA through the qualifying tournament, and walked away with the MVP trophy. That's not someone who needed more time. That's someone who was ready.
And I think she made it all a priority in the offseason. But most importantly for Caitlin, for somebody who loves to just play, just to find joy in playing again. I mean, it's hard when you're injured, and you're in and out, and you don't really know what to expect, or you don't really trust sometimes, your body and things that are happening. And so I'm proud of her and the work that she's put in and the commitment that she continues to make, and I'm happy for her that she can find joy in playing again and just go out and do what she does best.
Any reasonable reading of that performance would factor into how you rank players and teams going forward. You'd look at the FIBA MVP and connect it back to the 62 records and the All-WNBA First Team and the 4th place MVP finish, and conclude that the injury year was a detour, not a destination. The GM survey dropped after all of that happened, after the FIBA tournament was over and the MVP was awarded, and the results read like none of it registered. Clark dropped from 50% in the franchise player vote down to 20%, tied for second behind someone who hasn't played a professional game. The GMs had the FIBA results sitting right in front of them and still wrote down what they wrote down. Clark finally sat down for an interview and addressed the GM survey directly, and the way she handled it tells you a lot about where her head is right now. She didn't come in hot, didn't go line by line through the rankings to argue her case. She started somewhere more interesting than that.
Was that an emphasis in high school as well? Like, was that something that people talked about, kind of the mental side of the game and taking care of yourself?
Man, high school was a long time ago now. It was like 7 or 8 years. I had a really great high school coach. I wouldn't say that was probably like the number one focus. But we didn't have a sports psychology coach in high school or anything, but I think my coach in high school always emphasized the mental preparation of the game still. So building those habits and, always checked in on us as people as well. So I feel like I've been really, blessed to be surrounded by coaches and people that really care about you as an individual before a basketball player.
The first thing she brought up was the sports psychology work she'd been doing during her recovery. And that's not a throwaway comment. Most players talk about the physical side of coming back from injury because that's the part you can measure. The miles logged, the reps completed, the pain that eventually stops. The mental side is harder to talk about because it's harder to quantify, and Clark went there anyway. She talked about how having a dedicated sports psychology coach changed the way she processed sitting out. How the mental work of watching your team play without you is genuinely different from any physical challenge, and how that work feeds directly into the competitive mindset she's carrying into 2026. She's not the same player who went down with quad, thigh, groin, and ankle injuries last year. She's someone who spent 10 months doing the internal work that a lot of players skip because it's uncomfortable. And she came out the other side with a cleaner idea of who she is and what she wants.
When you know that everything you do is going to be scrutinized to the nth degree.
Yeah, it's definitely easier said than done. And I think people forget at the end of the day, I care more than all of you. I want to be the best, and I'm always analyzing my play. I'm always trying to find ways to be better, and so I think just that part of it. And I can always say allow myself grace, but you always have that fire and that hunger inside of you to always want to be better, and you're a perfectionist, and then you get irritated when it doesn't go your way.
And what she wants, she said plainly, is to be the best. Not the most popular, not the most talked about. The best. She acknowledged the GM survey without pretending the results didn't sting a little, and then she moved on to what she's actually going to do about it on the court, which is a much more unsettling response for the GMs who filled out that survey than anything angry would have been. She also tackled the off-ball criticism head-on, and she was almost a little amused by it, pointing out that questions about her off-ball play and what she wears to practice have basically become the two topics reporters can't stop bringing up.
Yeah, your guys' two favorite questions, what I wear to practice and me playing off-ball basketball.
I don't want to ask about specifically that part of your role. I want to ask how you've gotten better about it, and thanks for playing with Kelsey and all these years.
Yeah, you don't want to be predictable in what we do. And also, a lot of what we did last year when I wasn't playing, like AB brought the ball up a lot. She initiated a lot of the offense. And, you know, on a lot of the misses, I try to be a great defensive rebounder. I need to improve. That's something I didn't do too hot in the preseason games. But like, I want to get it. I want to go and I want to play.
Her actual answer on the off-ball question was direct, though. She's been working on it specifically. She has a real approach to functioning without the ball in her hands, and she explained what that looks like inside the Fever's system. Playing off-ball for Clark isn't just standing in the corner waiting for a pass. It's about how her shooting range forces defenders to follow her away from the paint, which opens driving lanes for Kelsey Mitchell and creates better catch-and-shoot looks for players like Lexi Hull coming off screens. When Clark talked about what she brings to Indiana more broadly, she went beyond her own numbers pretty quickly. Her presence on the floor changes how defenses have to guard Aaliyah Boston, because you can't load up on the post when Clark is standing 30 feet away, capable of making you pay from anywhere. Her passing out of pick and roll makes the offense genuinely hard to scheme against, because the right read changes every single possession depending on how the defense rotates. Boston draws her defender into the paint, and Clark finds the gap. Mitchell attacks a closeout, and Clark is already looking at the next pass. That interconnected stuff is what makes the Fever's offense hard to stop when Clark is healthy and operating at full speed.
Dead balls, things like that, like it's difficult bringing the ball up 94 feet, but if my teammate is standing there not being guarded, why wouldn't I just pass him the ball? That's just an unselfish play to make. And then, when we get into things in the half court, I think like being a great screener, like that's an area that I can really, really, really improve in. I haven't always been a good screener. So just trying to do that a little bit better. And, obviously the last game, it was fun to play with AB and like do some inverted action where I'm setting some stuff for her. Like that's really difficult to guard. Like, what do you do in that scenario? Like, do you both go to AB? Like, do you stab? Do you switch? Like that presents a mismatch problem for them.
She's back on the court this weekend for her first official WNBA action in almost 10 months. The GM survey is sitting right there as fresh bulletin board material. And every general manager who looked at the Indiana Fever's roster and wrote, "Not promising," is about to watch that team play a full season of games. The GM survey asked who you'd build a franchise around, and the GMs picked someone who hasn't played a single WNBA minute over a player who broke 62 records, won Rookie of the Year, finished 4th in MVP voting, made All-WNBA First Team, and then won FIBA Tournament MVP coming off a multi-injury season. Clark doesn't need to argue that. Neither do the Fever. Saturday, May 8th, Indiana hosts Dallas at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and Clark is back. Boston is healthy, Mitchell is healthy, Hull and Cunningham are ready to bring the energy, and White has had a full offseason to build around a healthy Clark. The GMs have bet against her twice now, and the 2026 season is the answer to both. Do you think Caitlin will win WNBA MVP this year? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.